Ms. Foo Mee Har.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2018 is a far-sighted plan with targeted measures that builds on momentum to reform our economy and care for our people. It is prudent yet aspirational as it plots a path to a visionary and sustainable future for our country. It is also a bittersweet budget. Singapore's economy grew at a faster than expected pace, with encouraging growth in productivity, real wages, and output. Last year's budget recorded a healthy surplus of 9.6 billion, thanks to exceptional items. 700 million was set aside to share with Singaporeans via SG bonus. When looking beyond short-term headline numbers into the longer-term outlook, Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat prescribed the bitter pill of a GST hike to come. This is to cater for expected expenditures in the next decade for infrastructure developments and aging population. Even though it would have been more convenient to do otherwise, I appreciate the Minister's courage to be upfront and begin the uncomfortable conversation of money not enough now, in order to give Singaporeans plenty of time to prepare. It is understandable that no one likes GST hike. We can take comfort that this increase is not immediate, with exact timing between 2021 to 2025, depending on the state of Singapore economy, how much expenditures grow, and how buoyant existing taxes will be. As a principle, I urge the Minister that we should try and delay the need to raise the GST rate. First, with the recovering Singapore and world economies, the shift in global economic weight towards Asia, these shifts represent significant opportunities for our firms and people. One optimistic scenario sees Singapore economy continuing to outperform our forecast over the next few years with recurring budget surpluses. Under these happy circumstances, we should review the need for a GST rate hike. Second, I would like to call on the government to continue studying all other possible streams of revenue. For example, expanding the scope of GST to cover rapidly growing e-commerce market will plug tax leakage to online sales and level the playing field for offline companies that have struggled to compete. Indeed, with cross-border transactions expected to account for more than half of online sales, the plan to levy GST on all imported digital services by 2020 represents a significant step in broadening the government's tax revenue streams. I hope that tax on imported digital services will pave the way for a broader e-commerce tax on goods and services when complexity of an effective tax collection mechanism for low-value imported goods can be resolved. Given the projected exponential growth of e-commerce, its potential for GST contribution must be worth the effort to get it right. Sir, I would also like to ask that, in line with the announcement of increased tobacco taxes, the government also consider reviewing taxes on liquor and gambling. By bringing Singapore's low gambling tax rates of 5 to 15%, closer in line with Macau's rate of 39% and Australia's rate of up to 45% in some states, the authorities can collect much of the 3 billion intended to be drawn from a 2 percentage point GST hike. The government should also consider introducing sugar tax in the light of growing concerns over diabetes. Other tax revenues could include introduction of a capital gains tax and increase in property tax for non-resident property owners as imposed by countries such as UK, Australia, and New Zealand. When GST hikes becomes inevitable, I call on the government to offer more in the offset package to help lower and middle-income households and seniors cope with increases in cost of living. The new package should help people understand how support provided actually offset taxes they pay on the expenses. The government must do a better job to assure Singaporeans that GST increase will be implemented in a progressive manner and that authorities will moderate the impact of this increase on those who struggle to make ends meet. Mr. Speaker, I support the Minister's position not to tap our reserves any more than we currently do. Under the existing NRIC framework, 50% of expected net investment returns is already contributing to as the single largest source of funds for government expenditure. Its contribution has risen steadily over the years, such that $1 in $5 of government spending now comes from NIRC. This high dependency on our NIRC, I think, represents a significant vulnerability for Singapore, given the volatility that comes naturally with any investment portfolios. So given even the best investment managers will admit that they can only manage risk, not returns. To ensure a sustainable fiscal position, there may be a need sometime in the future to consider a limit upon which government spending can tap NIRC to avoid over-dependency over and above the current NIRC framework. Sir, Singapore's reserves were built up because our pioneering leaders were financially prudent, and this has strengthened Singapore's footing on many fronts. The latest being Singapore's consideration of using reserves to provide guarantees against long-term borrowings to build critical national infrastructure at lower financing cost. This is a much better way to tap the strength of our reserves without having to draw directly on them. Whilst I support this approach, I would like to ask the Minister how these borrowings against reserves can be structured and operationalized. What is the expected difference in borrowing costs versus investment returns from the reserves? Mr. Speaker, the wage credit scheme and corporate income tax rebate will help companies overcome near-term challenges. I'm pleased to see broad-based schemes such as PIC replaced by targeted measures to foster innovation in R&D, go international, build capabilities, and forge partnerships. However, there are three critical areas we need to address. First, companies are still very concerned that government regulations have not kept up with the times. I spoke in the last budget about the need for government to create enabling environments within which companies can become nimbler and more innovative in order to cope with the rapid pace of innovation and increasing competition, even from within the ASEAN region. Companies do recognize that selected agencies have tried to do things differently, but they often voice their frustration of being tripped up by the last-mile regulations. A whole-of-government approach is needed to create a dynamic ecosystem with coordinated efforts across agencies to update related rules and regulations. Second, the impact of the $4.5 billion industry transformation program announced in Budget 2016 has yet to be realized. The industry transformation maps are still a work in progress. This effort will need to be speed up. Their implementation is urgent. ITMs were supposed to be a joint effort between industry partners, trade associations, and public agencies, all coming together to support the sector's transformation. The government's role was to bring industry stakeholders together to catalyze action. Yet, industry players feel that the private sector has not been adequately involved in the process. Given the pivotal role ITMs is meant to play in the future economy, all stakeholders, including companies themselves, must start pulling its own weight for this important venture to succeed. Third, the budget does not address measures to deal with Singapore's shrinking workforce, nor offer guidance on foreign manpower policy, despite calls for help by businesses struggling to deal with manpower strategies, and obviously severe shortages. Many firms complain that they are not able to embrace the push for companies to go digital and adopt new technologies amidst a severe tech talent crunch. While we must continue our manpower lean approach as the way for firms to grow and maintain the overall ratio of foreign to local talents in our workforce, I call on the government to consider some adjustment in the mix of foreign manpower to support growth areas earmarked in the future economy, such as expertise in data analytics, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. Shortage of skilled talent will constrain our efforts to transform our economy, with the problem becoming more acute as economic growth gains pace. In order to capitalize on growth momentum, foreign manpower policies may need to evolve to include skill-based factors to prioritize types of foreign skills and expertise like those adopted in other countries. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2018 addresses many issues, some of which confront us now, others which are on the horizon of the next decade, but all of them of consequence. It lays out a roadmap for a fiscally sustainable and secure future for Singapore in the face of considerable challenges, including aging population and infrastructure. It calls on us to face down these challenges today so that when we deal with them, we do so from a position of strength. As the old Chinese proverb says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Mr. Speaker, I support the budget.